Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. In the heart of Pine Hollow, a small town where time seemed to have paused, life meandered along familiar paths. The townsfolk knew each other's stories, their routines weaving a tapestry of shared history. Yet, amidst this close-knit community, shadows lingered, secrets and sorrows that whispered beneath the surface. One such shadow was Daniel Wren, a man whose name once resonated with respect and admiration. A master carpenter by trade, Daniel's hands had shaped many of the town's cherished structures, but life, with its unpredictable currents, had swept him into a maelstrom of misfortune. The death of his beloved wife, Margaret, had been the initial fracture, splintering his world into unrecognizable shards. Grief became his constant companion, leading him down a path where the bottle offered solace and responsibilities faded into the background. Jobs were lost, friendships strained, and soon Daniel found himself adrift, a vagrant in his own town. On a particularly crisp autumn morning, Daniel's wanderings led him to Maggie's Diner, a modest establishment known for its hearty meals and the warmth of its proprietor, Maggie herself. The diner was a haven for many, a place where the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the scent of sizzling bacon, creating an inviting embrace. Daniel stood outside, his gaze fixed on the door that emitted a persistent high-pitched squeak each time it opened, a sound that grated against the otherwise harmonious ambience. Summoning the remnants of his pride, Daniel stepped inside. The bell above the door jingled, announcing his arrival. Conversations momentarily hushed, and eyes turned toward him, some filled with pity, others with disdain. Ignoring the weight of their gazes, he approached the counter where Maggie was wiping down the surface. "Morning, Maggie," Daniel greeted, his voice raspy from years of hard living. Maggie looked up, her eyes softening. "Daniel, it's been a while." He nodded, swallowing the lump of shame that threatened to choke him. "I noticed your door's been acting up. That squeak could drive a person mad. I can fix it for you if you'd like, in exchange for a meal." Maggie studied him for a moment, then offered a gentle smile. "Deal. Tools are in the back." As Daniel set to work, his hands remembered the dance of the craft. The familiar feel of the tools, the scent of wood and oil, it all came rushing back, igniting a spark that had long been dormant. In no time the door swung open smoothly, the irksome squeak silenced. Unbeknownst to Daniel, his actions had not gone unnoticed. Seated in a corner booth, partially obscured by the morning paper, was Evelyn Hart. To the townspeople, she was an enigma, a woman of grace and poise, who had arrived in Pine Hollow a few months prior. Her past was a tapestry woven with threads of mystery, and speculation about her origins ran rampant. Some whispered that she was a widow seeking solace. Others believed she was an artist in search of inspiration. The truth was far more complex. Evelyn was, in fact, a CEO of a vast corporate empire, a woman whose life had been dictated by boardrooms and bottom lines. The relentless pursuit of success had left her hollow, yearning for authenticity, for connections untainted by ulterior motives. Pine Hollow had offered her anonymity, a chance to rediscover herself away from the suffocating confines of her high-powered existence. As she observed Daniel, she saw beyond the tattered clothes and unkempt beard. She recognized the precision in his movements, the latent talent that lay beneath the surface. But more than that, she saw a reflection of her own fractured soul, a person seeking redemption, a chance to rebuild. After Daniel had finished his meal, a generous plate of eggs, toast, and bacon, he prepared to leave. But Evelyn intercepted him. The door. "Mr. Wren," she began, her voice a melodic blend of confidence and warmth. "May I have a word?" Daniel turned, surprised. "Do I know you?" "Not yet," she replied with a gentle smile. I'm Evelyn Hart. I have recently come into possession of an old cabin on the outskirts of town. It's in quite a state of disrepair. I could use someone with your skills to restore it." He hesitated, suspicion flickering in his eyes. "Ma'am, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not the man I used to be. There are plenty of other carpenters in town who could do a better job." Perhaps Evelyn conceded, "But I believe in second chances, Mr. Wren, and I think this project could be mutually beneficial. Room, board, and a fair wage in exchange for your expertise." The proposition was tempting. A chance to work, to have a roof over his head, to reclaim a semblance of dignity. After a moment's contemplation, he extended his hand. "All right, Miss Hart, you've got yourself a deal." The cabin was a relic of bygone days, nestled amidst a grove of ancient oaks. Its once sturdy walls sagged with the weight of neglect, and the roof bore the scars of countless storms. Yet, beneath the decay, Daniel saw potential, a structure yearning to be revived, much like himself. Days turned into weeks as Daniel immersed himself in the restoration. With each nail driven and board replaced, he felt pieces of himself knitting back together. Evelyn was a constant presence, her initial role as observer evolving into that of a willing apprentice. She marveled at the transformation, not just of the cabin, but of Daniel. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the restored cabin, Daniel Wren stood on the porch, his hands calloused yet steady, reflecting the journey he'd undertaken. The once dilapidated structure now stood resilient, much like Daniel himself, a testament to redemption and the power of second chances. Inside, the cabin exuded warmth. Evelyn Hart, the enigmatic woman who had offered Daniel this transformative opportunity, moved gracefully around the space, her presence both calming and invigorating. Their partnership had blossomed over the months, rooted in mutual respect and an unspoken understanding of each other's past wounds. One evening, as they sat by the crackling fireplace, Evelyn broke the comfortable silence. "Daniel," she began, her comfortable silence, voice soft yet resolute, "I've been thinking about the future of this place. It's become more than just a cabin. It's a symbol of renewal. What if we opened its doors to others seeking a fresh start?" Daniel looked at her, the flickering firelight reflecting in his thoughtful eyes. "You mean like a sanctuary?" She nodded. "Exactly. A place where individuals can come to heal, learn a craft, and rediscover their purpose, much like you have." The idea resonated deeply with Daniel. He envisioned the cabin filled with people, each on their own journey toward healing, the sound of hammers and saws harmonizing with laughter and shared stories. "I'm in," he said, a genuine smile breaking across his face. "Let's do it." Together, they transformed the cabin into the Hart Wren Restoration Center, a haven for those seeking solace and a new beginning. Word spread throughout Pine Hollow and beyond, attracting individuals from all walks of life, veterans, the homeless, and those simply lost in the maze of life's hardships. Among the first to arrive was Clara, a young woman, whose eyes held shadows past traumas. She had been living on the streets, her spirit battered but not broken. Daniel took her under his wing, teaching her the art of woodworking. With each chisel and carve, Clara's confidence grew, the rhythmic motions of the craft, piecing together the fragments of her shattered self-esteem. Evelyn, too, found herself deeply involved, sharing her knowledge of business and life skills with the residents. Her past as a CEO, once a guarded secret, became an asset, providing invaluable insights to those eager to rebuild their lives. As the seasons changed, so did the lives within the center. The once quiet cabin now buzzed with activity and purpose. Residents came and went, each leaving behind a piece of their story, woven into the fabric of the center's legacy. One crisp autumn morning, a letter arrived for Evelyn. The elegant script and familiar seal sent a shiver down her spine. It was from her former company, requesting her return to address pressing matters that only she could resolve. Conflicted, Evelyn shared the news with Daniel. "They need me back in the city," she said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "But my heart is here with you and the center." Daniel took her hands in his, the strength of their bond palpable. "Evelyn, you've given so much to this place and to me. If returning is what you need to do, I'll support you. But know that your presence here has been transformative." Tears welled in her eyes as she grappled with the decision. After a night of contemplation, she realized that her journey in Pine Hollow had redefined her purpose. The corporate world, with its relentless demands, no longer held the same allure. The following day, Evelyn penned her resignation, choosing to dedicate herself fully to the center and the community they had built. The act was liberating, a shedding of an old skin to embrace a more authentic existence. Years passed, and the Heart Wren Restoration Center flourished, becoming a beacon of hope and transformation. Daniel and Evelyn's partnership deepened, their shared vision and unwavering support for one another laying the foundation for a profound love. One evening, as they stood on the porch, watching the sun set over the horizon, Evelyn turned to Daniel. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" she asked, her eyes reflecting the hues of the twilight sky. He nodded, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Every day, this place, these people, it's more than I ever imagined possible." She rested her head against him, a contented sigh escaping her lips. "Thank you for taking that chance with me, for believing in this dream." Daniel smiled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "It was never just your dream, Evelyn. It became ours." In the heart of Pine Hollow, amidst the towering oaks and whispering winds, the cabin stood as a testament to the beauty of second chances, the power of community, and the enduring strength of love rediscovered. The air in Pine Hollow had shifted. Mornings now carried the scent of cedar and warm coffee, and laughter sometimes escaped through the open cabin windows, like sunlight through dusty panes. It wasn't just the weather changing. Something deeper had begun to settle, like the grain of old wood finally being revealed beneath decades of paint. Daniel Wren rose with the dawn, as he always had when he owned his workshop years ago, back when orders were backed up for weeks and apprentices vied for his approval. Now he stood barefoot in a half-sanded hallway of Evelyn Hart's family cabin, the floor beneath him slowly transforming under his care. The walls that once sagged with neglect were sturdy now. The creaks had quieted. The place was finding its voice again. Evelyn padded down the stairs minutes later, her long sweater dusted with sawdust, dark hair twisted into a loose knot. She held 2 mugs, one for him. "The kettle squealed just for you," she said, offering the cup. Daniel accepted it with a nod. "You're getting good at not burning it." "A woman of many talents," she replied, smiling over the rim. Their mornings had grown into this gentle rhythm. Shared silence, quiet sips, the occasional joke. Yet beneath the warmth, something unspoken curled. Daniel felt it most when she leaned too close to examine his work, or when her laughter lingered a second too long. Outside, the autumn air whispered promises. Inside, Evelyn walked to the fireplace, where yesterday's work still lay in pieces. She ran her fingers along the hand-carved mantel they'd salvaged from the barn. "This was my grandmother's favorite spot," she murmured. "She'd sit here every evening, knitting sweaters for neighbors who never asked." Daniel glanced up. "And you? Did you sit beside her?" Evelyn nodded. "When I wasn't being groomed for boardrooms," she used to say. Your heart doesn't need a salary to be worth something. I didn't understand it then. Daniel said nothing. He understood it now, and she was beginning to. As days passed, they worked in tandem. Daniel showed her how to match new wood with old, how to feel for rot beneath surface polish. She taught him how to use the tablet she'd brought from town, and they laughed when he tried to scroll with calloused fingers too broad for touchscreens. But healing was never just laughter. One evening, while nailing in the last section of trim along the back hallway, Evelyn's phone rang. She silenced it. Again it rang. Again she silenced it. Daniel noticed. "You can take it." She hesitated, then confessed. It's the board. They think I'm in Switzerland overseeing a merger." Daniel set down his hammer. "How long can you keep hiding this?" Her lips pressed tight. "I'm not hiding. I'm healing. There's a difference." He turned back to his work, but his chest felt hollow. That night, she didn't stay for dinner. The next morning, Daniel found her already at work in the garden, pruning long-forgotten rose bushes. Her sleeves were rolled up, hair damp from dew. "You used to wear silk suits," he said, teasing. "I used to wear masks," she answered, eyes not leaving the thorns. The pause between them was longer this time, not heavy but tender. "I want to open this place," Evelyn said suddenly. "Not just restore it. I mean, use it. Retreats, workshops, a space for people to come, rebuild, heal." Daniel stared. "You want to share it?" She looked at him. "You showed me what it could be. Why, I want others to feel that too. Oh, I want others to feel that too." A wind stirred the branches above them, scattering the last gold leaves of the season. "We could teach woodworking," she added, voice more tentative now, and storytelling, cooking. "You said once that broken things deserve a second life. So do people." Daniel felt the words lodge in his throat. He swallowed. "Then let's build it," he said. And they did. By winter, the cabin had a new roof, new beams, and a soul reborn. Locals came with stories and helping hands. Widows. A boy with an eye for patterns who said nothing but carved quietly all afternoon. Through it all, Evelyn and Daniel stood at the center, not as teacher and student, not as CEO and carpenter, but as two people who had learned to see each other clearly. And on one snow-wrapped morning, as fire crackled and laughter rose from the main room, Evelyn pressed a small box into Daniel's hand. Inside was a hand-carved medallion, walnut and ash, bearing a single word, belonging. Daniel looked up, blinking hard. She smiled softly. "You gave that back to me. I thought it was time someone gave it to you." His voice was a whisper. "You already did." Outside, the snow fell gently. Inside, the cabin, once broken and forgotten, glowed with warmth, light, and life restored. And between two souls, something stronger than timber held fast. In the heart of Pine Hollow, as the days shortened and the air grew crisp with the approach of winter, the cabin stood as a testament to renewal. Daniel Rennan and Evelyn Hart had poured their labor and hearts into its restoration. Each repaired beam and sanded window frame, not only mending the structure, but also weaving an unspoken bond between them. Yet, beneath the surface of their shared accomplishments, Daniel sensed an undercurrent of secrecy surrounding Evelyn. It was in the subtle moments that Daniel's suspicions took root. A glimpse of an expensive watch peeking from beneath her flannel sleeve, incongruent with her otherwise modest attire. The occasional, hushed phone calls she took just beyond earshot, her posture tense, voice clipped. And then one evening, as Daniel flipped through an old magazine in town, his eyes landed on a photograph. Evelyn, poised and commanding, featured in an article about influential business leaders. The caption identified her as the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. The revelation settled heavily in Daniel's chest. He pieced together the fragments: the luxury watch, the cryptic calls, the familiar face in the magazine. Evelyn had come to Pine Hollow not just to restore a cabin, but perhaps to escape a life of corporate entanglements. Despite the swirling questions, Daniel chose silence, hoping that in time, Evelyn would unveil the truth herself. Their days continued in a delicate dance of collaboration and unspoken words. Daniel found solace in the rhythm of their work, the shared meals, the quiet evenings by the fire. Yet the weight of his unasked questions grew, casting shadows over their companionship. One brisk afternoon, as they worked side by side reinforcing the porch railing, Evelyn paused, her gaze drifting toward the horizon. The sun cast a golden glow on her face, highlighting the furrow in her brow. "Daniel?" she began softly, her voice carrying a tremor. "There's something I need to tell you." He set down his hammer, turning to face her fully, bracing for the confession he had long anticipated. She took a deep breath, her hands wringing the hem of her shirt. "I haven't been entirely honest about who I am. I haven't been entirely honest about who I am. Before coming here, my life was different. I led a company, a large one, but it left me feeling hollow, disconnected. I came here seeking something real, something tangible, something tangible." Daniel listened, his expression unreadable, heart pounding in his chest. "Meeting you," she continued, "working on this cabin together. It's been more fulfilling than any boardroom or business deal. But I should have told you sooner. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." A silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant call of a mourning dove. Daniel finally spoke, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "I knew, Evelyn. I saw the signs, the watch, the calls, the magazine. I was just waiting for you to trust me enough to share." Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes, a mix of relief and guilt washing over her. "You knew? And you stayed." He nodded, a gentle smile breaking through his rugged features. "Everyone has a past they're running from or trying to make peace with. I figured you'd tell me when you were ready." Evelyn stepped closer, reaching for his hand. "Thank you for your patience, for understanding." Daniel squeezed her hand, the warmth between them dispelling the lingering chill of uncertainty. "Let's keep building this cabin, this place, whatever it is between us, together." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting hues of pink and orange across the sky, they stood side by side, the cabin behind them no longer just a structure of wood and nails, but a sanctuary where truths were laid bare, and new beginnings were truths. Where truths were laid bare, and new beginnings forged. The morning Evelyn returned, the mountain air felt different, less guarded, more alive. The dew clung to the porch rails Daniel had sanded only days earlier, each bead catching sunlight like truth catching breath. She didn't arrive in silence this time. Her sleek car crunched gravel deliberately. She stepped out not as the stranger had met at Eddie's diner, but as Evelyn Hart, the woman behind headlines and holdings, billion-dollar mergers and jet-black suits. And yet, today she wore jeans and a sweater far too simple for a woman of her stature. Her hair was pulled back, her face bare of makeup. No armor, no performance. Daniel was already on the porch, hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee. He didn't stand or move toward her. He waited. That had become their quiet language. No rush, no pressure, just presence. She walked up the steps with hesitant grace and sat beside him on the wide beam, he'd repaired only a week ago. "I thought about not coming back," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I figured." He took a slow sip. "But you did." "I had to." Daniel looked out at the trees beyond the clearing, golden leaves shifting gently in the wind. "You're not the only one who's run before, Evelyn." She let the silence settle, then turned to him. "I wasn't running this time. Not really. I didn't know if I was allowed to stay." "You mean if the truth disqualified you?" Her eyes glistened. "Yes." He finally turned toward her. "You still put in the work. Still showed up every morning with splinters in your hands and flour in your hair from trying to cook breakfast. That's more than most people ever do." Evelyn let out a shaky breath. "It wasn't just about fixing the cabin for me. I needed to fix myself. I didn't know how badly I needed this place. You, the work, the quiet." Daniel looked at the cabin, its roof now whole, its walls steady again. "Funny thing about restoration, you can't fake it. You either dig deep and do it right, or it falls apart again the moment the storm hits." He stood and held out his hand. "Not just forgiveness. A choice?" She took it. From that day forward, things between them were simpler and deeper. They worked side by side, not because of an agreement or paycheck, but because the rhythm of labor soothed them both. Evelyn didn't retreat into calls and email. Her laptop only came out at night now, and even then she seemed reluctant to leave the warmth of the fireplace Daniel had restored stone by stone. They cooked together, meals that burned, overflowed, or sometimes came out surprisingly delicious. Evelyn learned to laugh when she dropped a skillet. Daniel found himself smiling more. They read on the porch when the rain fell. They listened to records Evelyn's grandmother once played on an old phonograph they'd restored together. The cabin no longer echoed with emptiness. It breathed. One afternoon, as they laid the final floorboard in the upstairs bedroom, Evelyn wiped her brow and said, "You know, I used to think everything had to be either a success or a failure. Black or white, worth billions or worthless." Daniel tapped the edge of the board with his mallet. "And now I think the most valuable thing I own might be a porch swing and a man who doesn't need to be impressed." Daniel chuckled. "Well, the swing creaks a bit. Then let's fix it together." That evening, over a pot of chili and cornbread that was more flour than corn, Evelyn shared an idea. "What if we didn't stop here?" He raised an eyebrow. "What if this cabin wasn't just the end of something, but the beginning? What if we really stored more than houses? What if we gave people like you, people who have lost everything, a chance to work with their hands again, to build, to heal, to heal, like you helped me heal?" Daniel's hand froze on his spoon. "You want to start what? A center?" She nodded, eyes alight with hope. "A place where restoration isn't just for wood and stone. A place where dignity gets nailed back into the frame. Where worth isn't measured by resumes or tax returns." He studied her for a long moment. "And you'd fund it, every nail," she whispered. "On one condition," he said, setting his bowl down. "We name it after someone who believed in second chances long before I ever did." She tilted her head. "Mary, my wife, she used to say, everyone deserves a place to come back to, even if it's just a porch and a cup of coffee." Evelyn's smile was soft and reverent. "Then let's build Mary's place." The months that followed were full of sawdust and spreadsheets. Daniel found himself training his first apprentice, a teen fresh out of rehab who shook like a leaf the first time he held a hammer. Evelyn coordinated partnerships, balancing her new mission with just enough of her former life to make it all possible. Word spread. People came. Veterans, widows, recovering addicts, lost souls with calloused hearts and calloused hands alike. They built cabins, mended chairs, rewired hearts they thought were beyond repair. At night, Evelyn and Daniel returned to their own cabin, now filled with warmth, photos, mismatched dishes, and stories. They danced slowly in the kitchen to an old jazz record, her head on his chest, his hand at the small of her back. "I never imagined I'd end up here," Evelyn whispered one night. Daniel kissed her temple. "Me neither, but it feels like home." He nodded. "That's because it is." And somewhere in the forest of second chances, where the trees listened and the porch swing swayed softly in the wind, two people who had nothing left found everything they'd ever needed, in truth, in trust, and in the restoration of a life built with love. The morning after the storm, silence blanketed the valley like snow. The wind had died. The trees stood bowed and dripping, and the sky, washed clean of thunder, stretched wide and pale above Hartley cabin. Daniel Wren stood on the porch, coffee steaming between his fingers, watching as sunlight caught on the wet leaves. The storm had torn branches from trees and scattered debris across the property. But the cabin had held. Behind him, Evelyn Hart moved quietly through the kitchen, her bare feet soft on the old pine floor. She didn't say anything at first. Words felt like they might break the sacred quiet that had followed their long, soaked night. It was Daniel who finally spoke. "We should check the south wall. That's where I heard the worst of the wind." Evelyn joined him on the porch, pulling his old flannel tighter around her shoulders. She looked out at the trees still glistening with rain. "We should," she agreed. But neither of them moved right away. For the first time in a long while, they weren't just surviving. They were standing still, in peace. The morning passed in a rhythm of recovery. Fallen limbs were cleared, the makeshift braces from the night before replaced with sturdier ones. Evelyn followed Daniel's lead, still learning how to read the structure, how to listen to the quiet language of wood and weather. Her nails were chipped, her hair pulled into a loose braid, and her heart, for once, felt steady. They worked side by side, occasionally exchanging glances that said more than words could. Around noon, Daniel paused by the pile of firewood and studied the ruined tree that had toppled just short of the tool shed. "You think we could use it?" Evelyn asked, wiping her brow with the back of her arm. He ran his hand over the bark. "It's split, but the hardwood's good. Might make for a fine mantel, maybe even a table." Her eyes lit up. "A table here, for both of us," he nodded. "A table's where life happens. Meals, conversations, plans." He looked at her. "Memories? That afternoon? They built a fire, not because the temperature required it, but because something inside them did. A symbol of warmth after chaos." They sat on the floor of the main room, plates of grilled cheese sandwiches between them, the fire crackling, the rain-streaked windows glowing amber in the early dusk. Evelyn set down her plate and leaned her head against the wall behind her. "Do you ever wonder how it all unraveled?" Daniel sipped his coffee. "You mean life?" She nodded. "All the time. They didn't need to trade details. They'd already shared the bones of their stories. His fall from stability, hers from identity. But the questions lingered like smoke from a fading fire. "I used to think control was everything," she whispered. "That if I planned hard enough, worked smart enough, I could bend life into shape. But this," she looked around the room, "this was never part of the plan. And yet, Daniel said. "Here we are, in a half-restored cabin, eating grilled cheese by firelight like it's the best meal in the world." She chuckled. "Because it is." In the days that followed, their rhythm deepened. Daniel began carving the mantle from the storm-felled tree, his movements slow, deliberate. He let Evelyn help, teaching her how to find the grain, how to listen for the hum beneath the blade. She watched him with a kind of reverence. This man who had once been discarded by the world, yet still built beauty with steady hands. Every night they cooked simple meals together. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they didn't. But there was always music. Soft tunes from an old radio Evelyn had rescued from storage. Old jazz. Folk ballads. Once, Daniel swore he heard her humming along. And once, she caught him smiling at her through the sawdust. One morning, Evelyn arrived at the workshop with a binder tucked under her arm. "I've been working on something," she said, a little breathless, like a child sharing a secret. Inside the binder were sketches and notes, pages of designs, curriculum ideas, even financial projections. "What is this?" Daniel asked, flipping through. "A dream," she said. "Half-baked, probably impossible, but what if we turned this place into something more?" He looked up. "A school," she said. "A place where people who've fallen through the cracks can learn a trade. Not just woodworking, restoration, masonry. Real craftsmanship, real dignity." Daniel's throat tightened. "I know people with means," she continued, her voice catching. "I could fund the startup. But I need someone like you to run it, to teach, to be the soul of it." He closed the binder and looked at her for a long time. "You think people like me can be the soul of something?" he asked quietly. Evelyn reached out, took his weathered hand. "You already are." They spent the next weeks building more than just walls. They drew up plans between sanding floorboards. They talked curriculum while mending windows. They imagined a future where young veterans, displaced workers, women escaping abuse, and people who just needed a new start could find refuge and skill in the same place Daniel had found his. It wasn't just the cabin that was healing. It was everything. The day they finished the fireplace mantel, Evelyn ran her hands over the smooth cedar, the natural whorls catching the firelight like golden waves. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Daniel didn't respond right away. He walked to the hearth, placed the mantle atop its supports, and secured it with care. Then he reached into his back pocket and pulled out a small carving, an old symbol from his family's past, etched into a piece of the original cabin wood. "A phoenix. Thought it belonged here," he said, fitting it carefully into the center. Evelyn traced the edges. "A bird rising from ashes?" He nodded. Her eyes shimmered. Daniel didn't smile. He just looked at her, long and deep, and said the words neither of them had dared until then. "I love you, Evelyn." She blinked, stunned. "Daniel, I'm not asking for answers. Not promises. Just same as you gave me." Her voice was hoarse when she answered, "I love you too." The fire cracked. The air shifted, and without a single step, they were closer than they'd ever been. That night they danced. No music, no rhythm but the fire's gentle hiss and the creak of floorboards. Just two souls in the quiet, rediscovering what it meant to belong, not to a place, but to each other. Spring would come. Students would arrive. A center would rise from weathered beams and fallen trees. But for now, the night held them gently. Two people who had lost everything, and somehow found not just home, but heart. And in the cabin they had restored with bare hands and brave hearts, Daniel and Evelyn began the most lasting creation of all, a life rebuilt together, one loving breath at a time. The next morning, golden light filtered through the trees. dappling the cabin's fresh siding and casting long shadows across the newly cleared courtyard where wild grasses had once overrun the land. Daniel stood on the porch, coffee steaming in his mug, the scent mingling with pine and the faint memory of rain. Evelyn had yet to arrive, but her voice still echoed in his mind from the night before. "Your hands, my resources, one vision, my resources. Together, we can build a place for people who have nowhere else to go." It was still sinking in, her dream of a restoration arts center, of taking what they'd started and letting it ripple outward into lives like his once was. Broken, adrift, search. Daniel, who had once slept in doorways and under bridges, now stood with blueprints in hand, staring at a future he never believed he deserved. Not after losing Mary, not after the business collapsed, not after the world forgot him. But Evelyn hadn't. By the time her car crunched up the gravel road and came to a stop beside the cabin, Daniel had already marked off a rough outline of new buildings in the dirt with old boards. She stepped out, dressed in jeans and work boots, her silk blouse replaced by flannel. The CEO was still in her eyes. But so was the woman who had learned to use a chisel, who laughed when the power saw bucked the first time she used it. "I brought muffins," she called out, holding up a paper bag. "They're still warm." "I brought sawdust," Daniel replied, grinning. "It's not warm, but there's a lot of it." They laughed. It was easy now, the rhythm between them. Trust layered thick beneath every word. She joined him on the porch, handing him a blueberry muffin. They sat in silence for a while, watching the land stretch before them. It still looked wild, unfinished, but now it held promise. "I keep seeing them," Evelyn said softly. "Men like you, women like my sister, people who need a space to breathe again. What if we really can build this?" Daniel nodded slowly. "We can, not overnight, but board by board, beam by beam. That's how everything good is made." They spent the morning sketching out possibilities. A main workshop with long benches and open windows, a tool library, a communal kitchen with old wood cabinets and pots hung from rafters, dorm rooms with bunk beds, a garden out back, rich with tomatoes, squash, and hope. Evelyn spoke of partnerships with local shelters and veteran groups, of offering apprenticeships, of training the forgotten in the art of restoration, not just of wood, but of worth. Daniel drew slow, deliberate lines, his pencil smudging the edges of their vision. But his hands were steady. By midday, the cabin buzzed with life again. Evelyn's assistant, Clara, arrived in an SUV packed with folders and laptops, her eyebrows arching as she stepped into the rustic charm of what was slowly becoming their headquarters. "So this is where you've been hiding," she murmured, glancing between Daniel and Evelyn. "I wasn't hiding," Evelyn said, brushing sawdust from her shirt. "I was remembering who I am." They held the first planning meeting that afternoon at the old picnic table out front. Daniel didn't say much. He wasn't one for meetings. But when Clara hesitated over the question of curriculum, Evelyn turned to him. "Daniel," she said, her voice calm but sure, "what do you wish someone had taught you when you were starting out?" He looked down at his hands, thought of sleeping cold under a bridge in Spokane, of hunger, of shame. Then he looked up. "How to hold a hammer without fear, how to look someone in the eye when they say you're worth training. How to fix something, and know that, just for that moment, it's enough." There was a long silence after that. Clara nodded, tears forming but not falling. Evelyn reached over, resting her hand on Daniel's for just a second. "That," she said, "is our curriculum." As summer deepened, so did the work. Contractors came and went, but Daniel remained the constant, the soul of the place. He taught the crews about mortise and tenon joints, about how to feel grain direction through fingertips alone. Evelyn handled permits, partnerships, press inquiries. She was a whirlwind in the mornings, a student by lunch and a dreamer by dinner. They shared long nights on the porch, plans spread between them, lanterns flickering against the dusk. There were still moments of tension, when the foundation for the East Wing sank unexpectedly, or when a donor balked at the idea of including those without formal experience. But they faced each challenge together, weathered it like they'd weathered the storm. One night a thunderstorm returned, not the destructive kind, but a summer one, full of warmth and static in the air. Rain pattered the roof as Evelyn stepped out, barefoot, and let it wash over her face. Daniel joined her, leaning against the post beside her. "I used to think second chances were for other people," he said. "Not for someone who'd failed the way I did." "You didn't fail," she said. "Life just knocked you down hard." He turned to her. "And you walked away from a world that worshipped you. Built this instead." She smiled through the rain. She smiled through the rain. "Because I finally realized what mattered. Not applause. Not quarterly growth. Just making something real. Like this, like us." It was the first time she'd said it like that. Us. He didn't answer with words, just reached out, brushing a damp strand of hair from her cheek, letting his hand linger. They kissed under the storm, soft and unhurried. Two souls who had rebuilt their lives one board, one truth, one heartbeat at a time. By fall, the first class arrived. A veteran with haunted eyes, a young woman who'd aged out of foster care, a widower who'd stopped speaking after his wife passed. They came with nothing but broken pieces, and left with tools, with skill, with something like faith. At the dedication ceremony, Evelyn stood before the crowd, wearing a tool belt over her blazer. Her speech was short. "This cabin saved me," she said. "And he," she gestured to Daniel, "taught me how to make something beautiful from what's been broken. We built this place so others could find that same hope. This is only the..." They named it the Wren Center for Restoration Arts, a name that honored both legacy and rebirth. The final plaque read, "Where craftsmanship rebuilds not only wood, but lives." That night, as music played and lanterns glowed through the trees, Daniel and Evelyn stood together on the porch, arms intertwined, watching their dream take root in others. "What do you see?" she asked. He looked out at the lit windows, the laughter, the life. "A place to begin again," he said. And in the quiet that followed, she whispered, "For all of us." A legacy carved in wood and heart. The morning sun cast a golden hue over the newly constructed buildings of the Restoration Arts Center. The scent of fresh timber mingled with the crisp autumn air, a testament to the labor of love that had transformed a once-abandoned cabin into a sanctuary of hope. Daniel Wren stood at the entrance, his calloused hands gently tracing the engraved letters on the wooden sign that read, "The Margaret Wren Restoration Arts Center." Evelyn Hart approached, her eyes reflecting the warmth of the day. She observed Daniel's silent reverence and placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "She would be proud," Evelyn murmured. Daniel nodded, emotion thick in his throat. "Margaret believed in second chances. Naming the center after her, it feels right." The decision to honor Margaret's legacy had been unanimous. Her unwavering belief in redemption and craftsmanship had once inspired a community, and now her name would continue to inspire countless others seeking a fresh start. As the days unfolded, the center buzzed with activity. Veterans, individuals displaced by life's unpredictable tides, and those yearning for a new beginning arrived, each carrying their own stories of loss and hope. Daniel, with his patient guidance, taught them the art of woodworking, emphasizing that, much like their lives, even the most damaged pieces could be restored to beauty. Evelyn utilized her resources and connections to provide the center with that state-of-the-art tools and materials. Yet she found her greatest joy in rolling up her sleeves, working alongside the participants, and witnessing firsthand the transformative power of creation. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a tapestry of colors across the sky, the community gathered for the inaugural exhibition of crafted works. Hand-carved furniture, intricate sculptures, and meticulously restored antiques adorned the hall, each piece narrating a journey of healing and redemption. Daniel stood before the assembled crowd, his eyes scanning the faces illuminated by the soft glow of lanterns. "Margaret once told me," he began, his voice steady yet filled with emotion, "every piece has a story, and every story deserves a second chance. This center is more than just a place to learn a craft. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the belief that we can all be restored." Tears glistened in the eyes of many, including Evelyn, who felt a profound sense of fulfillment and purpose. As the night wore on, laughter and music filled the air. Strangers became friends, bonded by shared experiences and the collective pursuit of renewal. The center had become more than just a school. It was a beacon of hope, a place where broken pieces were mended and new narratives were crafted. In the months that followed, the Margaret Wren Restoration Arts Center flourished. Stories of transformation spread, attracting more individuals seeking solace and skill. Daniel and Evelyn, once two souls adrift, found purpose not only in their work but in each other, their partnership deepening with every project completed and every life touched. And so, amidst the scent of sawdust and the symphony of hammers and the symphony of hammers, Zolls, a legacy was carved, not just in wood, but in the hearts of all who entered, a lasting tribute to Margaret's enduring belief in the power of redemption and the art of crafting one's own second chance. The scent of cedar and beeswax lingered in the air, wrapping the Margaret Wren Restoration Arts Center in warmth as soft winter sunlight filtered through the tall windows. Daniel stood at the workbench, guiding a young woman's hand as she ran her chisel along the edge of a reclaimed banister rail. Her name was Carla, 28, recently sober, and learning to carve again what the world had taken from her. "Not too much pressure," Daniel murmured. "Let the wood tell you what it wants to be." Carla nodded, her jaw tight with concentration. There was something sacred in that moment, in the silence between teacher and student, in the care being passed from hand to hand. And it was a silence Evelyn stepped into like breath. She wore her signature hybrid uniform now, tailored jeans and a flannel shirt beneath a blazer worth more than most of the center's equipment. Yet no one looked at her twice anymore. Here she wasn't a symbol of wealth or power. She was Evelyn, the woman who stayed up late sanding window frames with the students, the woman who cried softly during Daniel's lectures on resilience in craftsmanship. "Coffee?" she offered, holding out a steaming mug to Daniel. Her eyes sparkled, though he could see the weight behind them today, something she hadn't yet said aloud. "Bless you," Daniel smiled, taking the mug. "You keep this up. I'll make you head of kitchen duties." Evelyn rolled her eyes but laughed. As long as we all agree I'll never be in charge of the actual cooking." They sat together on the back porch, their favorite spot overlooking the workshop where the students had just completed their first major project, a communal dining table crafted from a wind-felled maple. It gleamed like honey in the sun. It gleamed like honey in the sun. Beside it, benches curved to invite gathering. "I got a call this morning," Evelyn said, her voice quieter than usual. "From my father." Daniel raised an eyebrow. She had spoken of him only in fragments. Cold dinners, silent expectations, a legacy of boardrooms and hollow victories. "He's read about the center," she continued, "seen the coverage in the business journals, and suddenly he wants to tour, to see what I've built." Daniel sipped his coffee, letting the moment breathe. "And what do you want?" Evelyn looked out toward the woods, the old trails Daniel had shown her months ago, now covered in frost. I want to be proud of what he sees. But more than that, I want to know that even if he doesn't understand it, I still do." Daniel nodded. "You don't owe him understanding. But if it brings peace, maybe he'll see what you've created here, what we've built." Their quiet was broken by laughter spilling from the dining hall, a group of students joking over their hand-built chairs. Daniel's heart swelled. These weren't just people finding craft. They were finding themselves. The next day, the elder Mr. Hart arrived. His polished shoes sank awkwardly into the graveled drive. He looked out of place like a statue dislodged from some cathedral of profit. Evelyn met him at the porch with a calm Daniel hadn't seen in her before. Not defiant, not trembling, simply grounded. Daniel watched from a distance as she led her father through the workshops, her voice low and sure. She introduced him to Carla, to Hovey, a Navy vet who'd found in carving what he couldn't find in pills. She showed him the cabinet she and Daniel had restored together from warped cherry wood, the kitchen where she'd once nearly burned toast, but learned how to laugh again. Mr. Hart said little. His eyes moved slowly. But Daniel saw the way his hand lingered on the wood grain of a finished table, how his expression shifted when a student hugged Evelyn without hesitation. After the tour, he asked to speak with Daniel alone. "She's changed," the older man said, standing beneath the sign that bore his daughter's name alongside Margaret's. "Or maybe she's become who she was meant to be." Daniel studied the man's face. He looked tired. Tired in the way ambition eventually wearies itself. "She found something real here," Daniel replied. "Not just in this place. In herself." Mr. Hart nodded. Then did something unexpected. He offered his hand. "Take care of her." Daniel didn't hesitate. Always the seasons turned. Winter softened to spring. The garden Evelyn planted with the students began to bloom. Wild lavender, tomatoes, rows of sunflowers that reached for the sky like they'd known darkness and wanted none of it. Every day, new stories entered the cabin. A young man from Detroit who used to run with the wrong crowd now found peace in dovetail joints. An elderly widow began building memory boxes for children in hospice care. A former executive who'd lost his way after a breakdown now taught budgeting and business to students with startup dreams of their own. Evelyn, ever the quiet architect behind the scenes, handled grants, coordinated media, and pored over logistics late into the night. But in the mornings, she was often found in the garden, dirt under her nails, smiling as she helped stake up new shoots. Daniel, meanwhile, became the heartbeat of the center. His hands, weathered and wise, restored not only furniture, but souls. His lessons weren't just about technique. They were about survival, about grace, about the beauty in flaws. Together they created something that rippled far beyond the cabin walls. One warm evening, Evelyn and Daniel sat on the porch again, watching fireflies dance among the flower beds. In the distance, the soft rhythm of hammers echoed, the students finishing a bench for a nearby park. Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small hand-carved box. He handed it to Evelyn without a word. Inside was a ring, simple, made from the oak beam they'd salvaged on their first week working together. Evelyn stared at it, speechless. "No diamonds," Daniel said with a half-smile. "No grand gestures, just something real. Something that's lasted through storms and seasons." Evelyn touched the ring, her fingers trembling. "I'm not asking for anything but what we already have," Daniel added. "Just maybe a way to call it what it is. To keep building together." Her answer came not in words, but in tears, gentle ones, sliding down a face that had once been all control and poise. "Yes," she whispered. "To all of it." They sat there for a long time, hand in hand, the cabin behind them glowing with the light of the lives they'd helped restore. In a world of boardrooms and back alleys, of missed chances and second beginnings, they had built something lasting, not from blueprints or strategy decks, but from patience, grace, and the belief that even broken things could become beautiful again. And every night, when Evelyn closed her eyes in the small apartment she now shared with Daniel above the original workshop, she didn't dream of mergers or headlines. She dreamed of wood grain, of laughter, of love carved carefully into each beam, of a life rebuilt, one joint, one nail, one heart at a time. The first frost came quietly. Daniel Wren noticed it before dawn, a thin layer of silver glinting across the woodpile outside the workshop. He held his coffee in both hands, steam curling up past his face, and watched as a pair of bluebirds picked delicately at the ground near the porch. He didn't shiver. The cold didn't bother him like it used to. Not anymore. Inside, Evelyn was humming. It was something Daniel had come to love. The soft, unconscious melody that meant she was lost in thought, usually brushing her fingers across a piece of paper or rereading old notes from a student. Today she was standing at the big farmhouse sink, peeling apples. The smell of cinnamon clung to the air like a warm memory. "Fall's coming," Daniel said, stepping in and setting his mug down beside the stove. Evelyn looked up, a curl falling across her forehead. "So is the Harvest Festival. Did you see the flyer in town?" He grinned. "You mean the one with our faces on it?" She blushed. "They said the Reinhardt Center deserved the spotlight." They both still stumbled over the name sometimes. Reinhardt, Daniel's surname, Evelyn's heart, literally and metaphorically. A year had passed since they'd opened the Restoration Arts Center. In that time, the cabin had grown, not in size necessarily, but in spirit. The walls now held laughter, the sound of chisels and sanders, and the occasional music of Evelyn's piano in the evenings. Students came from all over, veterans, women from shelters, former addicts, people who had known loss and grief, but who still showed up every morning ready to build something. And somehow, through all the hammers and timber, a life had been built too. Their life. "Daniel," Evelyn said softly, "do you ever wonder if we were supposed to meet that way? At the diner?" He looked at her, the way she still occasionally questioned fate, as though everything wasn't written in the grain of the very floors beneath their feet. "I don't wonder," he said. "I don't wonder," he said. "I know," she smiled, but her eyes shone. That afternoon they walked the edge of the property together. Evelyn's arm looped through his. The trees were starting to turn, russet and gold. The first hints of fire-colored change. Daniel stopped beneath an old sugar mill. "She's still standing," he murmured, resting a hand on the bark. "That storm nearly took her, but we braced her. Rebuilt her roots, just like this place." Evelyn looked at him, her gaze lingering. "And like us." He nodded. "Especially us." Later in the workshop, Daniel guided a young woman through the delicate shaping of a chair leg. Her name was Marcy, 26, fresh out of a halfway house, with shaking hands and eyes that hadn't learned how to believe again. But she had skill, hidden, raw, but real. Daniel saw it in her grip, the way she measured twice without being told. "You're not here to prove anything," he said gently. "Just to learn." Marcy blinked rapidly, then nodded. At the doorway, Evelyn watched in silence, her hands tucked into the sleeves of her wool cardigan. These were the moments that made her chest ache in the best way. Not from pain, but from the swell of meaning. Her phone buzzed, a reminder from a board meeting she was supposed to attend remotely. She didn't move, That night, the stars scattered like salt across the sky. They sat on the porch swing Daniel had built from reclaimed wood, a blanket over their legs, the last of the apple pie between them. Evelyn leaned her head on Daniel's shoulder. "Do you ever think about the future?" she asked. He chuckled. "I'm a carpenter. I think about the next board. That's about it." She poked his ribs gently. "I'm serious." He tilted his head toward her. "Watching you try to make coffee that still somehow tastes like burnt toast. Watching our students grow into people who don't hate themselves anymore. That's my future." She was quiet for a long time. "Then had a call today. A proposal." He turned to look at her. "They want me to head a new initiative in London, a sustainability program tied to traditional trades. They want to fund dozens of centers like ours, but I'd have to be gone for months." Daniel's hand didn't move from hers. "And what do you want?" She looked out into the trees. "I want to stay, but I also want to help more people." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then maybe it's not either or." She looked at him. "You go," he said. "We'll hold the roots here. You plant seeds there." Her eyes filled. "You'd stay. You'll be here, teaching, restoring, waiting." She cupped his face, kissed his forehead. "What did I ever do to deserve you?" He smiled, brushing a hand over her silver-streaked hair. "You look past the dirt, Evelyn. That's more than most." The next few weeks moved in whirlwinds. Evelyn prepared for her journey, coordinating with her team, organizing faculty, saying quiet goodbyes to the students who'd become her second family. On the morning of her departure, Daniel found a note on the bench near the maple tree. "You taught me to build again, not with money, but with hands and heart. I'll be back. I'll always come back." He stood for a long time beneath that tree, the note in his hands, his chest both full and aching. Autumn deepened. Daniel taught his classes with quiet confidence. He added new techniques to the syllabus, built new workbenches for incoming students, and worked late into the evening sanding pieces for the center's upcoming winter fundraiser. He missed Evelyn fiercely, but he also began to see what she meant, about legacy and roots, and sending hope into places that had none. One night, after a particularly cold day, he lit the fireplace in the cabin and settled into the armchair with a photo album Evelyn had made for him before she left. Inside were images of their first days. The squeaky diner door, the cabin in ruins, the storm, the first beam raised. Interspersed with them were notes she'd written in the margins. "Love is built one board at a time. Love is built one board at a time. Don't forget to rest. Your hands are not machines. You're my greatest restoration." He closed the book, eyes damp, heart steady. Winter arrived with grace. Evelyn returned just before the first snowfall, stepping from the car in boots that still weren't quite meant for snowdrifts. Daniel met her halfway, scooped her into an embrace and said, "You're late." She laughed into his coat. "I missed you." He kissed her without answer. Later, as they stood watching the first flakes fall outside the cabin window, Evelyn reached into her bag and pulled out a wrapped box. "For you," she said. Inside was a plaque, oak and brass, beautifully engraved. "The Margaret Wren Workshop, where craft mends the heart." Daniel swallowed hard. "She deserves it," Evelyn whispered. "So do you," he replied. By spring, word of the Wrenhart Center had spread far beyond Pine Hollow. Applications doubled, donations tripled, a documentary crew arrived. But through it all, Daniel and Evelyn kept the core unchanged. Hands in the sawdust, hearts in the quiet moments, building lives, not just things. And every so often, Daniel would find Evelyn by the maple tree, her fingers on its bark, whispering thanks. Years from now, when visitors walk the halls of the center, they'll touch the railings Daniel restored. They'll read the names etched into beams by former students. They'll find Evelyn's journals in the reading loft, filled with stories of wood and wind and second chances. And they'll know that love lived here. Not flashy or loud, but deep, like roots that held when storms came. In a forgotten cabin reborn from decay, two people once broken found not just each other, but the strength to rebuild the world around them. One nail, one act of courage at a time. There's something about Daniel and Evelyn's story that lingers long after the last word, like the scent of cedar in an old workshop. Subtle, grounding, and somehow sacred. Their journey, though rooted in fiction, mirrors the quiet truths of my own life. No, I don't swing a hammer for a living, and I've never restored a cabin deep in the woods. But I have known what it's like to feel lost in a world that moves too fast. I've known what it means to question my worth, to long for meaning beyond deadlines, screens, and expectations. I've carried the weight of unspoken grief, missed chances, and the haunting fear that maybe my best years are behind me. And yet, like Daniel, I've also learned that restoration doesn't begin with grand gestures. It begins in silence, in patience, in the simple act of showing up. It begins the moment you dare to believe you still have something to offer. In Evelyn, I see the part of myself that once chased success so hard, I forgot to ask what success really meant. I've worn masks, too, ones polished with ambition and obligation, until I no longer recognized my own reflection. Like her, I've had to step away from the noise to rediscover the sound of my own thoughts. And like her, I've found that the richest moments are often the simplest. A shared meal, a kind word, a morning spent creating rather than consuming. The cabin they restore becomes more than a shelter. It becomes a metaphor for all of us, weathered, worn, worth saving. It reminded me that nothing and no one is too broken to be made whole again. Sometimes all we need is a place or a person who sees past our ruins and believes in our potential. And when we find that, we don't just heal, we rebuild, stronger, deeper, truer. This story challenged me to look at my own life, not as something to perfect, but something to restore. To stop hiding behind credentials or comfort zones, and start engaging with what truly matters. Connection, craftsmanship, of work, of self, of love. It urged me to be more present with those I care about, to listen with hands unclenched, to create something lasting with whatever tools I have, even if they're metaphorical. Most of all, it reminded me that legacies aren't built in boardrooms or on resumes. They're carved into the quiet moments, the shared struggles, the repaired hearts. Like Daniel and Evelyn, I want to live a life that speaks gently but profoundly. We were here. We built something beautiful, together. Before we go, I'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Are you tuning in from the heartland of America, a quiet countryside, or maybe a bustling city dreaming of open fields? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. And if this story touched your heart, inspired you, or simply gave you a moment of warmth in your day, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another uplifting story like this. Thank you so much for being here. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to bring you more heartfelt stories soon. Until next time, stay kind, stay inspired, and I'll see you in the next one.